Hello, and welcome back to First Recapped. Today, we have a very domestic, twisted mystery for you all titled Gone Girl, released in 2014, which a psychopathic wife and a misogynistic husband struggle for the upper hand after she goes missing. There will be spoilers ahead, so proceed with caution. Over a visual of Nick caressing his wife's head, he says that when he thinks of his wife, he thinks of cracking her head open, unspooling her brain. He wants answers to what he calls the primal questions of marriage: what are you thinking, how are you feeling, what have we done to each other? She looks up at him. And with that deliciously ominous beginning, we meet Nick Dunn on the morning of July 5th. It is his wedding anniversary, and he goes to visit his sister at the bar they both own. He gifts her a board game, as it is also her birthday. They discuss how it has been 5 years since his marriage and that this year the theme is wood, for the wedding anniversary gift. There is then the first of many flashbacks where we see Amy and Nick meet at a party. He utterly charms her and kisses her after they walk through a sugar cloud. We also get to know that Amy works writing personality quizzes for a magazine and Nick writes for a men's magazine. In the present, Nick gets a call from his neighbor that his cat has escaped. When Nick arrives back home to get the cat, he finds a coffee table upturned and no sign of Amy anywhere. Alarmed, he calls the police. Detective Rhonda and James arrive at the house. They chat about how Nick and Amy have been living here for almost 2 years and that they initially moved here from New York City to take care of Nick's sick mother, who is now dead. Detective Rhonda places yellow sticky notes at spots she finds of interest, including an iron which was left on and a speck of blood over the stove. Rhonda then gets very excited when she finds out that Amy is Amazing Amy, the protagonist of a children's book series. We are then treated to another flashback. This flashback is from Amy's perspective, as she writes in her diary. It is the night of the book launch of another book in the Amazing Amy series, one in which the character is getting married. Her parents are the writers. Amy tells Nick how Amazing Amy was the golden child, she got everything from a dog to a varsity scholarship. While the real Amy had an average life. As she is talking to reporters and bloggers, Nick proposes to her in front of them after 2 years of dating. On his way home though, we see him stop at a small house which looks brown. Inside, the alarms start ringing as he is unable to punch in the correct code. He also finds another envelope, this one titled Clue 3. Detective Rhonda arrives and he says that this is his father's house, and he drops in once a week. She says she initially thought this was the brown house from the clue, but upon throwing light on the walls, we see it is blue. Nick leaves without disclosing anything about the latest envelope. In the next flashback sequence, Amy writes about how one can test their marriage for weak spots by adding a recession and subtracting 2 jobs. We see the two of them preparing for financially hard times ahead, but Nick is seen being cranky when unemployed. He gets a call from his twin, Margot, possibly about their mother. Amy says she knew that things were going to change after that. In a volunteering event held for the search for Amy, Nick notices a suspicious-looking guy in glasses. He follows him out but runs into a woman who acts nice to him and gets a selfie. He immediately realizes his mistake and asks her to delete the picture, but she refuses and leaves. Rhonda asks Nick if he knows about Noelle Hawthorne, a woman who approached the detective, claiming to be Amy's best friend, but he is completely clueless. Amy's mother is angry at Nick because he makes it seem like he is enjoying himself. Nick defends himself by saying that he is just trying to be polite and nice to everyone, just like his mother taught him. She apologizes. At the Dunn house, Rhonda asks her officer about some items, including golf clubs and a 65-inch TV, but he denies finding them in the house. At Margot's house, there is a news report about people calling Nick to be the killer, as he is seen smiling in a photo taken at the press conference. Margot asks him if he has told her everything, and he says yes. And that he is tired of people judging him. In a diary flashback scene, Amy talks about being upset that Nick didn't ask her before they moved to Missouri. She feels like a burden and wishes to disappear. In the present, that night after Margot has gone to sleep, Nick is visited by his secret girlfriend, his student named Andy. We get to know that this has been going on for a while, and they've been using a disposable phone to stay in touch. He tells her that they can't meet until things are safe and tells her to never mention the fact that he was planning on getting a divorce. Amy writes about how they had moved to Missouri to save Nick's mother from cancer, but she died, nonetheless. Amy used the last of her trust fund to buy Nick a bar and says that he only uses her for sexual needs, and she feels unseen. One night when he was getting ready to go out, Amy asked him if she could come too, but he says she will hate it. She makes a last-ditch effort and says she is thinking about having a baby. They get into a quickly escalating argument about the topic and Nick pushes her. She writes that she wasn't scared that he pushed her, but that he had wanted to hurt her more. Meanwhile, the police find out that Amy had tried to buy a gun because she was scared that Nick would hurt her. In the morning, Nick sneaks Andy out and is then promptly confronted by Margot, who has seen everything. She gives him a hard time and tells him how bad it would look for him if anyone found out. She turns on the TV so that he can see how people are interpreting his behavior. She then tells him to hire a lawyer called Tanner Bolt, an expert guest on the TV show who takes Nick's side. He seems like he could do a good job with Nick's hopeless situation. Rhonda and James discuss Nick at the station. James is convinced that Nick is guilty while Rhonda has a more neutral approach. The forensic report for the kitchen comes in and it turns out there was a lot of blood spilt and then cleaned up. The blood type is shown to be the same as Amy's, but they cannot confirm if it is hers. At the vigil held for Amy that night, Nick tries to make up for his past behavior and start strong. But he is put off when Noelle, who is in the crowd, asks him if he even knew that Amy was 6 months pregnant. This catches everyone off guard, especially Nick. People start asking Nick questions, but he runs from there. Rhonda visits him and asks him if he knew about the pregnancy. He denies it, saying that he doesn't even know who Noelle is. Rhonda shows him pictures of Amy and Noelle. She allows goes on to add that blood was cleaned in the kitchen, which is extremely incriminating for him. Rhonda shows him all the credit card receipts and asks Nick why he upped Amy's life insurance policy. By now, Nick is very infuriated. He denies having bought anything in the bank statements. Rhonda receives a call in which she is given confirmation about Amy's pregnancy. Nick then says that he won't answer any questions without a lawyer being present. Detective Rhonda and James find a partially burned diary in the fireplace of Nick's father's house. The diary reveals information about Amy's life, basically claiming that Amy was scared that Nick might kill her. Meanwhile, Nick finally figures out the third clue and goes into Margot's shed. There he finds everything that was mentioned in the credit card receipts, the golf clubs, the TV, everything. There is also a big gift box there for him. We then jump to the juicer part of the story, which is saying something. On the morning of July 5th, Amy is seen riding in an old car. She says that she is much happier now that she is dead. She reveals how she planned to frame her husband for murder. She befriended a local idiot, faked her pregnancy, created money troubles, and wrote a diary to mislead the police. She says she faked being a cool girl, what Nick wanted at the start. But he got lazy after they moved to Missouri. And his cheating on her was the last straw. She adds that she plans on killing herself after making his life miserable, to drive the final nail in Nick Dunn's coffin. Nick realizes that Amy has set him up and shows Margot the shed. Nick then meets with Tanner, and the lawyer assures him he is the man for the job. He asks Nick to find someone who was screwed over by Amy in the past, and they find Tommy, the guy Amy accused of assaulting her. He tells them that she ruined his life by that accusation because he had been innocent. Amy, meanwhile, has put on weight by indulging in junk food and dyeing her hair. She starts living next door to a woman named Greta. She plays the abused wife by self-inflicting a wound on her face. After her pregnancy is revealed on the news, Amy moves on to the next step in her carefully plotted plan. She calls anonymously to say that strange activity was seen in Margot's woodshed. On the other hand, people have now started speculating about Nick and Margot indulging in twincest. Back at the station, James is convinced that Nick killed Amy, but Rhonda still thinks there is more to the case. After he meets with Tommy, Nick goes on to meet Desi, Amy's other ex, but he refuses to help him. Tanner arrives at Nick's house and Nick tells him everything. He says that Amy is teaching him a lesson, and the treasure was her showing everyone his infidelities. The first clue was in his office where she planted racy red underwear for the police. The next clue was at his father's house. Tanner asks what was at his father's house, but Nick says he doesn't know, and they're also not allowed to go in. Tanner says it must be something really bad. He also advises him to tell the police about Andy. Meanwhile, one night while playing mini-golf, Greta and her boyfriend see Amy drop a bag full of cash on the ground. They attack and steal from her later on. At Tanner's suggestion, Nick does an interview with a famous host, Sharon Schreiber, to tell his side of the story. Amy, now without money, acts out of desperation and contacts Desi, the man who was in love with her to the point of obsession. He immediately sets her up at his lake house to lay low. Just before Nick's interview, Andy does a press conference with Amy's parents and reveals her affair with Nick. Tanner tells Nick to postpone the interview, but Nick refuses. He says he can handle the interview and appears on the show. At Desi's, Amy realizes that it might not have been a great idea because he has a very controlling personality. They watch Nick's interview together and Nick leaves enough clues for Amy so that she can figure out that he knows she set her up but he still loves her. His sincerity and honesty also make everyone else love him too. Which finally gives him a win since his wife had gone missing. This victory is short-lived as the police arrive to investigate Margot's woodshed and she is arrested. Nick wants to talk to Rhonda after Margot's arrest, believing that the truth will carry him through. But they are able to arrest him for his wife's murder when the murder weapon is tested positive for Amy's blood. It has now been 21 days since Amy ran away, and Amy plans to run from Desi's place as well. She sets up a whole scene to make it seem like he is raping her and keeping her against her consent. Meanwhile, Tanner gets Nick and Margot out on bail. Amy, on the other hand, murders Desi that night, making it look like self-defense and drives away. The next morning, Nick wakes up and hears a commotion outside. He walks out to see a gathered crowd as Amy gets out of a car, covered in blood. She walks up to him and faints in his arms. Later on at the hospital, the doctors confirm that her claims of being raped are legit. But Nick and Rhonda don't buy her story. The police take a formal statement from her where she tells them that Desi had kidnapped her and held her captive. Rhonda poses a lot of questions which don't match up, but Amy expertly tackles them. She says that despite their problems, she still wants to go home with her husband. Once they get home, Nick asks her to tell him the truth. So, she takes him to the bathroom and turns on the shower, in case he is recording her. He tells her that he is going to leave her, but she tells him that she will destroy him if he does. More than a month later, Amy tells him that she is pregnant. They have an argument, but she manipulates him into staying with her, to raise their child together. Helpless, Nick does what he is told. They have another interview where they announce the happy news and the movie ends. Wow, that was quite the story. Wouldn't you agree? Let us know how close you were to guess the actual plot twist. Like and subscribe for more awesome videos. See you all in the next one.